At exactly 0317 hours on March 22, 2026, the last fragile illusion of a negotiated peace in the Persian Gulf was obliterated in 11 seconds, not by a diplomatic failure, not by a miscalculation in a government conference room, but by the sound of a Kahr 313 drone swarm, 47 Iranian UAVs crossing the maritime boundary of the Strait of Hormuz at wave-top altitude, 18 meters above sea level, targeting the USS Paul Ignatius, the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, leading a 5-ship Allied tanker convoy through the most strategically critical 21 miles of ocean on the planet. The world had been watching this flashpoint build for 3 agonizing weeks. On February 28, 2026, Operation Epic Fury had lit the Middle East on fire. Joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes had killed Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, demolished Iran's nuclear research infrastructure at Fordow and Natanz, and sent the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps into a frenzy of decentralized retaliation that military planners in Washington had privately called controlled chaos. But there was nothing controlled about what IRGC Admiral Ali Fadavi had been preparing in the narrow straits between the Omani coastline and the Keshem Island Naval Base. For 17 days, Iran's IRGC Navy had enforced a de facto maritime blockade. Over 150 oil tankers sat dead in the water in the Persian Gulf, anchored in open, blue water beyond the strait, carrying a combined 20 million barrels of crude oil, worth $2.1 billion, every barrel locked behind a wall of Iranian steel drone, swarms, and midget submarines. Japan, the Philippines, South Korea, and India were already screaming energy emergencies. The IEA chief called it worse than the 1970s. Oil shocks combined. Trump had issued a 48-hour ultimatum: open the strait or the IRGC's Karg Island oil terminal, the beating heart of 90% of Iranian oil exports, would be obliterated. Then he extended the deadline by 5 days. And in that 5-day window, the IRGC saw not restraint. They saw weakness. And they moved. Do you believe the U.S. Fifth Fleet could smash through this blockade without triggering a full-scale naval war? Comment 1 if you think they could pull it off. Because what happened in the next 11 minutes would rewrite every war game simulation ever run by the Pentagon's Center for Naval Analyses. The convoy had been briefed at NAVCENT Forward Headquarters in Manama, Bahrain. At 0100 hours, 5 tankers, 3 Saudi-flagged VLCCs loaded with crude from Yanbu, 1 Emirati LNG carrier, and 1 South Korean chemical tanker were escorted by USS Paul Ignatius on point, the French frigate FS Languedoc on the southern flank, and 2 U.S. Navy MH-60 Seahawk helicopters flying ASW sweeps at 300 meters altitude. The convoy had been given a transit window of 47 minutes. The calculated gap between IRGC patrol rotations based on satellite overwatch from a STARS aircraft orbiting at 35,000 feet over the Gulf of Oman. They were 14 minutes and 9 nautical miles into that window when everything went wrong. At 0317:11, the /spy 1D phased array radar suite aboard the Paul Ignatius registered the thermal signatures of 47 small aerial contacts, rising from the northern shoreline bearing 008 degrees, altitude 18 meters, closing at 220 knots. The contacts were clustered in a wedge formation, not random harassment but a pre-programmed tactical swarm pattern, designed to saturate the ship's Mark 15 phalanx CIWS system, which can engage only a limited number of simultaneous targets, at a rate of 4,500 rounds per minute. At the same time, the convoy's electronic warfare suite, the /SLQ-32V6, lit up with a Category 3 threat, active radar, emissions from IRGC Type 209 and Fateh-class midget submarines, 2 of them, rising from the thermal layer at 80 meters depth, 3.2 nautical miles south of the convoy's starboard beam, and simultaneously, Link 16 tactical data screamed in. Alert from E-2D Advanced Hawkeye circling above, 12 IRGC fast attack craft, Seraj 1 missile boats, each carrying C 704 anti-ship missiles, with a range of 35 kilometers, had lit their engines and broken from concealment under the shadow of oil platform Rishadat, 6.8 nautical miles to the north. This was not a harassment operation. This was a synchronized, three-vector kill chain designed with one purpose: to sink a U.S. Navy destroyer in front of the entire world and prove that the United States could not enforce freedom of navigation in the Persian Gulf. The IRGC had learned from every previous encounter. They had watched American CIWS systems. They had studied the response times of the Aegis combat system. They knew the Paul Ignatius could not simultaneously track, classify, and engage 47 aerial contacts, 2 submerged submarines, and 12 surface missile platforms in the same engagement window. Their plan was geometrically perfect. On paper, they did not know about USS Montana. At 0317:26, exactly 15 seconds after the first radar alert, USS Montana, a Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine that had been trailing the convoy at 200 meters depth in ultra-quiet mode, its /BQQ 10 sonar system passively tracking every IRC submarine in the Strait for the past 9 hours, fired 2 Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes on a direct intercept course with the 2 Fateh-class submarines. The torpedo run time was calculated at 112 seconds. The IRGC submarine crews never heard the solution lock. They were running too shallow and too fast, their own propulsion masking the incoming acoustic signatures. At 0317:41, Commander Sarah Nakamura aboard the Paul Ignatius had already issued weapons-free authorization. The ship's Aegis combat system shifted to auto-special mode, the engagement posture the Navy reserves for saturation attacks. The forward VLS battery opened. 4 RIM 174 YARIM missiles, the Standard Missile 6 in its surface-to-air variant, went supersonic within 1.2 seconds of launch each, capable of terminal intercept speeds exceeding Mach 3.5. They detonated in the lead cluster of the Kahir drone swarm at 4,200 meters range, converting the forward 22 drones into expanding clouds of carbon fiber and lithium polymer battery fragments. The Phalanx CIWS engaged the remaining 25 drones in a 4.1-second burst, its M61 Vulcan rotating barrel achieving 4,500 rounds per minute, tracking and killing targets at 500 rounds per drone. The last drone fell at 400 meters from the Paul Ignatius's hull, close enough for the blast pressure wave to rattle every piece of loose equipment on the destroyer's port weather deck simultaneously. And this is the move the IRGC never planned for. The EA-18G growlers from the USS Gerald R. Ford's Carrier Air Wing 8, which had been orbiting 60 nautical miles south in complete emission silence, activated there, and /YLQ 99 jamming pods and flooded the IRGC 704 missile guidance frequencies with 4.5 gigawatts of directed electromagnetic noise. The Seraj won fast attack boats, 12 of them, already executing their attack runs at 42 knots, launched 18 C-704 missiles. Every single one lost its terminal guidance lock within 800 meters of launch. 14 crashed into the sea, veered wildly off course. 1 struck an uninhabited IRGC patrol boat 2.1 kilometers from the convoy. None reached their target. At 0318:53, 102 seconds after the first radar alert, the 2 IRGC Fateh-class submarines were struck by the Mark 48 torpedoes. The first detonated directly under the keel of submarine S-334, breaking its spine at the pressure hull joint and sending 32 crew members into 80-degree Fahrenheit water at 30 meters depth. The second struck the sail of S-337, destroying its control surfaces and flooding its forward torpedo compartment. Both vessels sank. Neither crew had managed to fire a single torpedo, but the battle was not over, because at 0319:07, the E-2D Hawkeye screamed a new alert that turned the blood cold in every command information center in the region. 3 Shahab, 3 ballistic missiles had just lifted off from a mobile TLA, transporter erector launcher, hidden in a hardened revetment inside the Keshem Island Naval Base. Their terminal target solution was clear: the convoy. Flight time to impact, 6 minutes and 40 seconds. At 0319:09, USS Paul Ignatius pivoted its Aegis radar to ballistic missile defense mode, transitioning from AW to BMD in 1.8 seconds, a feat of computational integration that took the U.S. Navy 14 years of software development to achieve. 2. SM-3 Block IIA interceptors erupted from the VLS battery in a ripple fire riding a plume of solid propellant into the stratosphere at Mach 15.2, the fastest objects ever manufactured by human beings, now climbing at 4,500 meters per second, toward an intercept point 140 kilometers above the Persian Gulf. The FS Languedoc simultaneously launched its own Aster 30 Block 1 and T interceptors as a redundant kill layer. The geometry was solved in real time by a distributed computing network across 3 platforms that shared a single tactical picture through the cooperative engagement capability data link. At 0324:31, 4 minutes and 22 seconds before projected impact, USS Paul Ignatius's SM-3 Block IIA achieved hit-to-kill intercept of all 3 Shahab, 3 warheads in the exoatmospheric mid-course phase, 128 kilometers above the Gulf. The kinetic energy of impact at those speeds was equivalent to detonating 1.4 tons of TNT. The warheads, traveling at Mach 11 when struck, vaporized into plasma and tungsten, fragments that fell harmlessly across 200 square kilometers of empty ocean. The thermal flash was visible from Qatar and Bahrain with the naked eye. It looked like a second sun rising over the Gulf at 0324 hours. And then came the reckoning. At 0326:00, exactly 8 minutes and 49 seconds after the first drone alert for Tomahawk Block V land attack cruise missiles, pre-targeted and salvo-fired from USS Paul Ignatius during the ballistic intercept window, crossed the Iranian coastline at 50 meters altitude at 880 kilometers per hour. Their targets, the Keshem Island TL revetments, the IRG Navy fast attack boat, fuel depot, the mobile C-704 missile reload facility at Bandar Abbas South, and, most critically, the IRGC Naval Command bunker embedded under 14 meters of reinforced concrete beneath the Strait Control Center. The Tomahawks were equipped with JSSM derivative penetrating warheads, each shaped charge designed to defeat hardened underground infrastructure. The Keshem Island Command Facility, the nerve center of the entire Strait of Hormuz blockade operation, ceased to exist at 0328-47. At 0331:00, as the convoy crossed the 12 nautical mile limit of the straits, Iranian territorial waters, and entered the Gulf of Oman, free, intact, unharmed. 2 Spirit stealth bombers that had been airborne from Diego Garcia for 6 hours executed a precision strike on the Shahab 3 mobile tel storage facility at Jask Naval Base, eliminating Iran's last forward ballistic missile platform capable of threatening the Strait approach corridor. The B-2s were in and out of Iranian radar coverage in under 40 seconds. They were never painted. They were never engaged. To the IRGC's air defense network, they simply did not exist until the JAS base ceased transmitting at 0331:22. The tanker convoy completed its transit at 0348 hours, docking at the Fujairah anchorage on the Arabian Sea side of the peninsula as the sun rose over the Hajar Mountains. The 5 captains had heard everything on their radio feeds. None of them said a word. 3 of them were found weeping quietly in their bridge wings when the naval escort peeled off at 0350. In the aftermath, the scale of the IRGC's defeat became clear and classified. Damage assessments distributed to NAVCENT and 5th Fleet commanders by morning. Briefing. Iran had committed its highest priority naval assets to this engagement. Its 2 most capable Fateh-class submarines, both gone. Its 12 Seraj, 1 fast attack craft, 8 destroyed by airstrikes in the following 2 hours, targeting the surviving boats returning to port. Its strategic mobile ballistic missile platforms in the Strait Corridor eliminated. Its Strait of Hormuz command and control bunker penetrated and destroyed. And Iran had achieved exactly 0 damage to a single Allied vessel, civilian or military. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz was broken, not by negotiation, not by diplomatic compromise, not by a 5-day extension of an ultimatum, but by 11 minutes of multi-domain warfare executed with such precision, speed, and technological overmatch that the IRGC commanders who survived reported through back-channel intelligence sources that they had experienced complete cognitive paralysis during the engagement. Their kill chain, tested and refined over 20 years of naval doctrine, had been dismantled systematically and simultaneously before a single crew member of any Allied ship suffered a single injury. Bio 600 hours on March 22, 2026, the first Saudi crude oil tanker in 23 days cleared the Omani coast and set course for the deep blue water of the Arabian Sea. It was followed by 8 others before noon. By evening, 23 tankers had made successful transits. Oil futures dropped $12 per barrel in Asian trading within 90 minutes of the first confirmed transit. The Philippines revoked its energy emergency declaration 48 hours later, but the geopolitical wound remained open and bleeding. Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, went to state television at 0900 hours on March 22 and declared that the IRGC losses in the Strait were a tactical adjustment, not a defeat, and that the struggle would continue across every domain available to the Islamic Republic. Intelligence intercepts classified within hours suggested that Iran had quietly requested emergency military consultations with Russia and North Korea. The Houthis in Yemen, who had stood down since October 2025, received a coded message from Tehran through a back-channel relay in Muscat that echoed conflict monitors, flagged as a Category 1 escalation indicator. The Red Sea, briefly quiet, was about to get a great deal louder. The lesson of the Strait of Hormuz, written in missile exhaust and torpedo wakes and the sinking hulls of 2 IRGC submarines, is one that every naval power on Earth studied with furious intensity in the days that followed. The United States Navy did not simply break a blockade on March 22, 2026. It demonstrated in live combat the full operational integration of its cooperative engagement capability, its Virginia-class submarine silent stalking doctrine, its ballistic missile defense at exo-atmospheric range, its B-2 Spirit first night stealth strike capability, and its EA-18G Growler electronic warfare suppression, all executing simultaneously across multiple domains against a coordinated multi-vector adversary in under 12 minutes, without losing a single platform, without a single Allied casualty. The IRGC had prepared a perfect trap. The U.S. Navy walked through it with the calm of a surgeon who had already rehearsed the operation 1,000 times in classified wargame simulations that the public will never see. The speed of the American response was not improvisation. It was preparation, years of it, billions of dollars of it, and sailors and submariners who had trained for this exact geometry of engagement in exactly this exact body of water. The question that every defense ministry from Beijing to Moscow to Pyongyang is now asking is this: if the world's most powerful navy can execute an engagement of this complexity in 11 minutes in a contested strait against a prepared adversary, what happens when the adversary is not Iran? Stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, the freedom of navigation that powers the global economy is not guaranteed by international law. It is guaranteed by those who have the will and the weapons to enforce it. Would you like me to break down exactly how the Aegis system transitions from AAW to BMD mode in under 2 seconds, and why no other Navy on Earth can do it?